everyone. This is your host, Gil Garcia, otherwise known as the Scribe. Today we are joined in our first ever video interview with a recurring guest on the podcast. Joining me all the way from South Africa is my good friend, Kim Appelgryn, here to tell us about her newest short story that got published, The Residents of War. Kim, it's so great to see you again.
Thank you, Gabriel. And it's nice to be back. And also congratulations on your podcast going to season 3. Well done. That is awesome.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you. You look lovely today, I might add.
Thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome. So, Kim, before we jump in, why don't you tell us, the readers, what you've been up to in terms of writing and everything since, I want to say earlier this year when we first began the podcast.
Well, I haven't been writing too much, I'm afraid. I did reach a goal this year, and that was to get another story published. And so that's basically what I was, really into for this year. But I've also got other writing projects going along. I've been busy with the time travels of Tristan and Troy.
Of course.
Originally, it was going to be a trilogy, but I've decided to span it into a 5-book series. So that's keeping me very busy and out of trouble. But yes, that's that. And of course, The Unwilling Assassin and The Shadow's Price, the new horror story that I'm busy writing as well.
Nice. So you've been busy as of late. I know we've been talking about your story of Tristan and Troy, which has definitely been in development for quite a while, I might add.
Yes, I know. It's been going very slow. You've seen personally what I had been going through this year.
Right.
So a lot of the stuff had to be put on the side. But I've got my life back on track and ready to go for more stories.
Nice. Well, I read this one twice, and listeners, you have to read this story. It is really good. So let's just jump right into it. So Kim, walk us through the thought process of The Residents of War. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is loosely based off of a family's experience. In your family, they went to the war?
That is correct. The story was inspired by 2 members of my family. My grandmother on my maternal side, she told me that her uncle, when he came back from World War II, he suffered from, in South Africa, we call it bomb happy. I know globally people would call it shell shocked. We call it bomb happy over here. And he didn't want to speak about his experience in the war. It was just too devastating. And then the second story came from my maternal grandfather. His older brother was a sniper in World War II. He was a sniper in World War II, and he went to Italy. And so that is where the story is actually based on, where these 2 friends from South Africa go to Sicily in Italy, because there was an Operation Husky, which I based it loosely on. And also my uncle refused to talk about his experience. He just, when he came back, my grandmother and my grandfather said he just did not want to say anything. It was just too devastating to relive. So I tried to put that into the story and to bring these emotions and all these horrible things that these 2 friends have been through, and just try to survive.
I remember when you first wrote the story up on Inkit, and the initial response was overwhelmingly positive, especially because you truly grappled with the realities of war at that time, and even still war now, the PTSD of the men that came back and how the war affected different people in different ways. So when writing those specific moments in the story, how did that make you feel? Did it make you feel kind of uneasy, a sense of vulnerability.
Yes, I don't know if it's the right way to say that. I felt I was just exploiting their feelings when they came back home, and I'm just making the story about it. But I just wanted people to realize that this is what happened, and they're just trying to make the best of their lives. So it's really just a bittersweet ending, really, for the story.
Ah, yes. And it's not only just a story of two friends who go to war, but it's also a murder mystery kind of way, a little mystery thriller. So
Yeah.
how did you kind of intertwine that kind of story into this one?
Well, when I was thinking of how to write the story, I thought, let me have one of the friends actually survive it when everyone else in his platoon thought that he had died in the war. And when they came back home and they tried to live their normal lives, he just came back, and just everything changed. His family changed, his work life changed, and so he was just this bitter, angry person. So I wanted to bring in again those emotions where people think that it's over, but those scars of war carry on in your life.
And it does truly show in the story. You definitely go into great detail, especially my favorite parts of the story in the beginning were on the war side in the Sicilian campaigns and then the Italian Peninsula campaigns. You truly did your research in what they went through and everything. And when we think of World War II, we think of like a lot of nations that went into the war. Obviously, the United States, Great Britain,
Mm.
France, British Raj, India. But a lot of people don't really realize that another one of England's colonies slash provinces was South Africa. And in fact, a lot of South Africans fought in the UK, fought for the British and British regiments. So how personal was it to you to really show that part of South African history and also to your history as well? How important was that to you?
No, it was very important. I mean, at the time when World War II took place, South Africa was still under Queen Elizabeth's father. So so yes, and we were taught British English. So anything that, if Britain was going to war, South Africa had to jump in and help as well. We were under the United Kingdom at that time. So it
Right.
was important just to bring all that and to remind everyone where we were in our own history as a nation.
Definitely. And I definitely think it's also really important to talk about, the other participants in World War II because that war truly encapsulated like a lot of people from around the world. And I like how you wrote in the story how it's kind of that same feeling we've seen a lot of war periods, either like the 40s, the 50s, or even modern, where you have the two best friends. One of them is the adventurer who wants to see and take part in battles, and the other one you could say is kind of hesitant, but know that it's his duty to serve. I like how you kind of make that balance between the two to show either one of us could be like this. And I like how you don't shy away that war is not glorifying. It's
Mm.
absolutely terrifying, and you show it in
Yes.
this piece. So I think is a huge achievement on your end too.
Thank you. No, thank you. And also, what I wanted in the story more than anything was that there was no villain in the story. There was no bad guy.
Definitely, yeah, because you can say the antagonist would just be the guilt, the memories of the survivor syndrome. Why did I survive and
Yeah.
no one else did?
Yes. I mean,
And
when I look at the family members, and even just other stories that I would hear from that time period, a lot of them always carried survivor's guilt. So that is why I wanted to incorporate that in the story as well, because I believe that is a very intense part, the turning point in that whole story as a whole.
definitely. And did you initially want this to be a short story, or did you have planned it to be a little bit longer, maybe like a novella?
originally, the reason why I came up with that story was because Inkit was holding a short story competition at the time. And when the competition came around, I was still busy with The Silent Witness, my first novel. So,
Right.
so I kind of rushed through it, to be honest, and submitted. But the reviews were amazing. So I did want to make it into a novella, but it worked well as a short story. And then when it got published, I even said to the publisher, Courtney, I wanted to make it into a novella, but I didn't really want to change anything. And he liked it as is. So maybe in the future it will turn into a novella, but at the moment it's working all right.
Yes, and I'm actually glad you brought up Courtney, because I think that's also another huge thing we also need to discuss is, so for listeners who have known Kim and me, well, especially for you and your situation early this year, you published your child, The Silent Witness, and to make a long story short, you went through a huge debacle with a publisher that really kind of upended you and took advantage of you, and it kind of scarred you for trusting a publisher again. And of course, I read The Silent Witness, and I believed it could work. And my friend Courtney, as you mentioned, started his own publishing house and kind of brought you guys together and just started talking. So, can you talk to us about what that experience was like? Getting to trust a publisher again and to say, you know what, I'm going to try again. I'm going to put my toe in once more.
Well, when I set the goal this year to publish another story, I didn't really know how I would go about doing it. And amazing enough, when you sent me that message to say that you know this person and, why don't you submit The Resonance of War? And when you mentioned the name, immediately everything went up. All my shields went up, because the minute I see the word publisher, I immediately think of a scam.
Right.
And I was bitten really bad by that publishing house, that.
Right.
But when from the moment that I submitted the short story and all the dealings with the emails that I've been sending to and from Courtney, when you just know that you can gel with someone and it's going to work. I mean, he laid all my fears to rest. He was really he really just took my book and he just made it into a work of art. I promise you. I really have got my faith back in publishers again. And yes, I would tell anyone, if they need a publisher, please send Courtney an email. I will always do shout outs for him.
Nice. And for those who may not know or who are familiar, Courtney was another person I interviewed in my previous season when I was interviewing historians. And Courtney is a military historian. He's also an author as well. And I think why Courtney really liked The Resonance of War is he is from a military family. His family served in the Second World War, so military history is really important to him. So I can definitely see The Resonance of War really touching him, and the fact you're very authentic in the representation of battles, combat, the kind of aftershocks of it. So I can definitely see why he loved it. And yeah, I can say no more good thing. I can say no less good things about Courtney. He is an incredible person, and he ultimately wants to make the author's voice their own. He does not want to take anything from it. And I know that was huge for you. That's probably one of the biggest things of all the things that you had to go through with the previous publisher. You want to keep the voice, your authentic self in the story, and Courtney allowed you to do so. He said that it was your right to be authentic.
Yes. No, so that was really a blessing in disguise. And I say thank you so much that you have brought this company through my way. Oh, my word. Cats.
It's all right. It's raw and authentic. We're going to get it all.
No, it's fine. Uh, anyway.
So, besides the Residents of War, and of course, A Silent Witness, I know you also mentioned the time travels. How's that been going along? Where are you currently at?
With the time travels.
Yes.
I'm actually almost finished with the first one, where they go back in time to King Arthur. I have been fleshing out the scripts for the second book, where they go back to the lost city of Atlantis. My goal for next year is probably to publish the first one of the time travels. I'm hoping.
Nice. And for those who have not read The Time Travels of Tristan and Troy, you need to read it. It's a grown-up version of Magic Treehouse. It is really well thought out. And that actually kind of goes back to the Residents of War, because I remember you said when we were writing The Time Travels, it was a little difficult of how to write, the dialogue of, young person, especially for even young men in the Residents of War. So how did that kind of work about? Because I know you said that was kind of one of the big challenges, writing dialogue about or for somewhat young characters.
It is, for me personally, it's difficult because I don't really write in a young English type of dialogue. You've seen the English that I've used in The Silent Witness and even The Resonance of War. So when it comes to writing dialogue for kids that are in college, sometimes I find myself reining myself in because I'm using Shakespeare when these kids should be using words like dude and all this weird stuff. I don't know. It's difficult, it's and I don't have kids, and I don't have, well, all my nephews and nieces are now grown up, so they don't talk like that anymore. So it's very difficult to still keep it on a level where you can reach out to young readers, but it's getting there.
Yeah, I completely understand. I think one of the young characters I wrote for my other story, the assassin, I had to write like he was in West Point Academy for like sophomore or junior, but it's not easy. It's not easy when you're actually writing someone that's around the age group or younger than you. Well, I shouldn't say younger than me. I'm only like mid-20s. You have already.
Okay, yes, all right, let's all put it out there. I'm 41.
Didn't mean to do that on purpose. I'm just trying to say.
Oh well.
But yeah, I mean, so definitely, as you said before, this whole year has definitely been quite a journey. And I don't want to go into it because I know it's very personal, very private. But since the end of the year is coming up soon in a few weeks, what are probably some of the things you would say are like your highlight moments, like very positive moments?
I can honestly say without a doubt that the friends that I have and the family that I have, if it wasn't for them, I would probably be in a much more darker hole today. And because I just love people, and I love my family and my friends, and I always make sure that they know I appreciate them, because when they are gone, you can't get that back. So I always am there for others that need me, and they are there for me as well. My mother used to say, your friends should not only be sunshine friends, you need friends during the winter times. So I mean, I have had that for many years. I had friends that were only there when the good times were, but when things just went bleak, they all of a sudden, didn't call you. They won't like come and see you. They'll just wait until it blows over and then they come back. So, so it has been very difficult, but the highlights were definitely my family and my friends.
Nice. That's actually very, very, very beautifully put. And Friends for the Sunny Days and Friends for Winter Times, I think, is an amazing quote, because it is true. Especially in these trying times, you definitely need your close friends to be by your side. I know, especially for our little family, we've definitely been by each other's sides, thick and thin. We've always encourage people. We've always been there to listen. And I definitely think it's funny looking back at the podcast, still to this day, almost a year now, your first episode I had on my podcast, which I think was January 3rd of 2022, is still the most listened to. It's not even top yet. Maverick may dethrone you in terms of his Las Vegas Las Vegas, but you are still the most listened to, have the most likes. It's so crazy. So how would you feel you're kind of different from the beginning of the year, in terms of that podcast? I mean, do you remember like the beginning of the year when that first started and how it was and the fun we had?
I do. I still remember how excited you were that you were starting this podcast, and you were just so full of it. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll be your first one. I mean, I think I was your first. I think I was the first one, right?
You actually were. And I think it's also very, in a way, symbolic, because when I first joined Inkit, you were the first person that I spoke to. You're the one that I had the most conversations with. Okay. And then you were the first person I interviewed for the podcast. And now for season 3, you're the first person I'm doing a video interview recording of. So you're always going to be the number one, which I think is really awesome.
Oh, I feel so blessed now. Thank you.
You're welcome. And yeah, I mean, it's just so crazy of how fast this year's gone by.
No, it has. And also, look how far the Discord group came along as well. I mean, amazing friends that I've made on there as well. And everyone's always rooting for each other. We also our own little family on that little author Discord.
Yes, definitely. And that's also, I think, it's a huge thing that came about too this year, was getting all of us together, especially when Inkit was in its fluctuation period, and meeting Amber, Autumn Amber, Maverick, J. Allen Winchester. And I still look back to the milestone episode I did with all of us. It's still chaotic as I remember. You remember that? It was you, me, Maverick. Yeah, oh my gosh. Oh, man.
Wow, that was fun. Are we going to have one soon again?
Yes, I do plan to have one soon. And I may actually do it on Skype, since I can probably get everybody on board and record. That would be amazing. And yeah, it's just crazy how fast this year's gone by, and definitely how we've changed and everything. But oh, I did want to ask about the Residents of War cover. So how did the cover come about? Because that's a very interesting cover for the book.
There's a South African author here. She's now retired, but she does covers, and she did the first Silent Witness cover for me.
Oh.
The very first. You remember that one?
I still have it next to me. I'm right next to my bookshelf. I can pull it.
So yes, so she also did the Time Travels of Tristan and Troy cover, and she did the Resonance of War. And I asked Courtney, should I get covers to redo it for me? But he liked the cover that I've got right now, and for a short story, it suits it. So she did put in the because the character, he's a barber. And there's that shadow with the guy that's hiding behind the building, and of course the gun and the map of Italy at the top as well. It's all shaded in there as well. So she captured everything in that cover. So I was going to change it, but I wasn't going to change it. It's just one of those things.
Definitely, and I think it's kind of like that murder mystery noir kind of cover. It is very, very different, but in a good way. Yeah, I
Mm.
mean, I can't stop talking about the resonance of war. And I know you texted me when I did the review of the resonance of war. You were very, very happy. And for listeners who
Mm.
did read that or listen to that, no, it was the same one I did for Kim's page, because it was true and authentic, because it was so good. And I think is a true craft of you as an author, especially for a short story as this. You truly make a novel size story in a very short amount of time, in a very condensed version, and it works. It works. If you
It
had to flesh it out, what parts or what chapters do you think you want to give a little bit more attention to?
I think I would give them the characters more a backstory, and I would also add in a little bit more tension of the wars in Italy against Mussolini and the fascist parties. I would have been, I would have done more in depth with those things, and of course near the ending as well, all the crime, the thriller, the suspense, those kind of things. Make it a little bit more eerie, but like Courtney said to me, it's been captured already, so I don't think I could ever really change it even if I wanted to.
And you shouldn't, because it really sums it up. I definitely feel you could do a lot of other short stories about the war, either the Great War, World
Mm.
War II, or maybe you can use something about closer to home. You can talk about the Anglo-Boer War, or the Boer War of Independence. I mean, there's a lot of history you could do that I don't think a lot of people know. And that's, I think, that's nothing I want to thank to you,
Yeah.
because you've really shown my eyes about the history of South Africa during the late 1800s and early 1900s, which often goes overlooked, especially when it comes even to World War II, because we don't
Yes.
consider South Africa being a participant in the Second World War.
Yes. I mean, if you had to look in our history, the Anglo-Boer Wars are like the First and Second World Wars here in South Africa. Those were our, uh, okay, we had quite a few wars here, but I mean, those were the turning points in our history.
Definitely, definitely. So, with all that has happened, with how you've grown as an author, and I forgot what you said about your word of wisdom to the authors. Now that it's the end of the year, what would be your word of wisdom now, going to the new year?
You know what? Don't carry baggage. I did that last year and it didn't help me this year. So next year I'm going in with no baggage next year. I've just learned to let go of things, just let God handle everything else, have faith, have love, and be happy. That's it, really. Don't go in with baggage, don't go in with hate in your heart. Just let it go.
That, I think, is really, really true. And I think pretty much we can sum it here for the interview. Again, I do want to thank Kim for joining us today live, in a way, and a little bit of promotion. If you want to purchase The Resonance of War, Kim, would you explain to our listeners out there and viewers of where they can purchase your Resonance of War, as well as The Silent Witness, the second edition?
Okay. Well, the Silent Witness second edition is on Amazon, as well as Resonance of War, and Barnes and Noble as well.
And I will link both of those in the description of this video for all of you to go and purchase. And I highly urge you to do so. And also, if you are a new author that is looking for some editing, for some great constructive feedback, Kim Appelgryn is perfect. She's actually done it for my book, The Gathering. It was phenomenal. Kim honestly knows the author's struggle. She will always make sure she'll keep your voice. She'll always be in contact with you. So if you are looking for someone to edit your work, give you feedback or even just review your story, Kim Appelgryn is your gal. She is the go-to.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, listeners, thank you for joining us for this first of many video interviews. Again, I want to thank Kim Appelgryn for joining us all the way from South Africa in the evening, I might add. That's another thing to listeners. Me and Kim, over this past year, have learned to find what works best for us, and we've nailed it down to a T. So thank you, Kim, for joining us today, and I look forward to good fortune for you in the new year, as well as the success of the Resonance of War going forward and your other works going forward as well.
Thank you very much, Gary. Really appreciate that.
You're welcome. Well, listeners, ta-ta.
Bye.